Well, I thank the Home Secretary for advance sight of her statement, especially after her busy weekend chairing the NEC, which excluded Andy Burnham from returning to Parliament. Anyway, the Home Secretary's statement... seems to be some concern coming from benches behind her on that. Anyway, the Home Secretary's statement is striking for what it did not say, because there was no mention, not one word, of her plans for total police officer numbers. And the reason for that is simple. Total police officer numbers are falling under this Labour government, as figures due for release later this week will confirm. Now, the last recruitment intake before the election was in March 2024, and there were 149,769 officers in post. That is the highest number in this country's history. By the same time the following year, under Labour, officer numbers had fallen by over 1,000. And in the current financial year, numbers are falling even further, with the Met alone saying they will lose a staggering 1,500 officers this financial year. So on officer numbers, the government is engaged in a con-trick. They are transferring officers away from crime investigation, away from 999 response and away from other teams into neighbourhood teams. So they can say neighbourhood numbers are going modestly up, but total police officer numbers are falling. So there'll be fewer 999 response officers, fewer investigation officers, response times will be slower, and investigations will not be as effective. The Home Secretary can set targets and make announcements, but the fact is she is presiding over falling total police numbers, and the public will be less safe as a result. Now, the Home Secretary has said she will change the structure of policing. Briefings over the weekend say this reorganisation will be complete in, and I had to double-check this, 2034, nearly a decade away. But we have a crime crisis today. Shoplifting and phone theft are both surging upwards under this government, and shoplifting is now at the highest level ever. Knife crime in London up by 80% under Mayor Sadiq Khan, and women are being let down too, with sex crimes up by 9%, rape up by 6%, stalking up by 5%, and harassment up by 6% under this Labour government. This requires action today, not in 2034. Now, her plan includes mandating the merger of police forces, and briefings over the weekend suggest a reduction from 43 down to 10 or 12. So a single police force might cover an area from Dover to Milton Keynes or from Penzance to Swindon. Such huge forces will be remote from the communities they serve. Resources will be drawn away from villages and towns towards large cities. And the biggest force in the country is the Met. And yet they have the worst crime clear-up rate of any force in the country. They fail to solve 95% of reported crimes, going to show that large scale does not automatically deliver better results. And therefore, we will oppose the mandated merger of county forces into remote regional megaforces. And police forces are warning that Labour's early prisoner release scheme means more crime and more demands on policing. Most criminals will now be released after serving just 1/3 of their prison sentence, and even rapists will only serve half. To make things even worse, Labour plans to abolish prison sentences of under a year, so even the most prolific shoplifters will never face jail. This is a recipe for disaster cooked up by the Home Secretary in her previous role. Now, there are some things we can agree on, because the Home Secretary has copied some things from us. I am glad that she is continuing the rollout of AI and live facial recognition that started under the last government, and we fully support that. It is right the Home Secretary will have greater powers to intervene. We announced that policy at our conference last year, and of course we support it. And she now says she will abolish non-crime hate incidents. Now, we need to see the details, but perhaps the Home Secretary could explain why Labour voted against that measure when we tabled it as an amendment just last year. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, the simple fact is this: Total police officer numbers are falling under this Home Secretary's watch. 999 response times and crime investigations will suffer. Shoplifting, phone snatching and sex offences are all rising under this government. And regional megaforces will make things worse, not better. Her grand plans will not even be fully implemented until 2034, yet action is needed today. These announcements will not make our streets safer this year or next year, and the public will rapidly see that.
Me, Madam Deputy Speaker, I will take no lectures from the Conservative Party on policing. They had 14 years in government and delivered no meaningful change beyond decimating neighbourhood policing, introducing the failed experiment of police and crime commissioners and sweeping away meaningful targets to hold our police forces to account. He complains about non-crime hate incidents. Pray do tell who was in government when they were brought in. He talks about Home Secretary powers. Which was the government that got rid of Home Secretary powers? It was the Conservatives. It was the Conservative Party, Madam Deputy Speaker, and not once in all the time that they have been in opposition since the last general election have they had the gumption to come to this dispatch box and apologise for their appalling track record on policing. It was the Conservative Party whose policies saw the slashing of police numbers by 20,000, a measure that they very hastily then tried to replace by bringing back another 20,000, but in a distorted way, which meant that 12,000 of those officers, warranted police officers, are doing desk jobs. If the Shadow Home Secretary, I do ask him, read the detail of the White Paper and really reconsider whether he wants to stand against everything in that White Paper, because he cannot possibly believe that it is a good idea for warranted police officers to be doing desk jobs. He cannot possibly think it's fine for 250 of those warranted police officers to be in HR and 200 of them to be in admin support. I cannot believe that even he, with all of his lack of attention to detail, thinks that that is a good idea. And I do urge him and those that sit behind him to perhaps reconsider whether they are going to stand against the policies unveiled in this White Paper. One thing, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I really must urge he looks at again carefully is on regional police forces. He knows full well, because I know he'll have looked at the White Paper, that those regional forces will have within them local police areas who can then concentrate on policing their local communities right down to the neighbourhood level. The only reason I am bringing in this new model of policing is to protect neighbourhood policing, something that was decimated on the Conservative Party's watch. If he wants to stand against local police areas focusing on local communities, regional forces dedicated to specialist investigation to make sure that rape cases, that murder cases have exactly the same high standard of service no matter which part of the country you happen to be in, then, more fool him, Madam Deputy Speaker, because these measures will result in a better policing model for everyone across our country. And he raises the example of the Met. And let me tell him, one of the things that Louise Casey found in her 2023 report was that the Met having the national responsibility for counter-terror policing, where they do counter-terror for everyone across the UK, distracts from the policing of London. These reforms will mean that counter-terror policing and all other national requirements for policing will sit with the National Police Service, so that the Met and every other force in this country can focus on policing their local areas. I cannot believe he wants to stand against reforms that deliver better local policing, but, Madam Deputy Speaker, that appears to be where the Conservatives are at.